think we're going to go inside, and just like Christ Church, someone's going to say a word to us. One thing to think about, how close all these houses of worship are here, and to think about the relationship of people of different denominations and different religions in a lot of ways, and the opportunity for partnership to bring about change in a city and in the world as well.
So how did we all get here, right? Not everybody, but some of us, especially Quakers in Pennsylvania, got here through William Penn. We know that William Penn is a fairly famous Quaker. He actually gave a lot of oomph to the Quaker movement, right? Quakerism came out of a time period where there was no king, there was a Lord Protector of England, and people found it very confusing, right? Because the Church of England and the King of England, they were all linked together, right? That was like that they had been for years and years and years. So a lot of religions and spiritual practices came out of this during this time, including George Fox's interpretation of Quakerism. George Fox is the founder of Quakerism. We associate him with finding that light. Quakers believe in an internal light that is within every person. That is the core belief of Quakerism, right? That light connects you to a higher power. Quakers back in the day, it was very Christian oriented. It was a Christian religion. Now, there are lots of Quakers that still associate with Christianity. They still associate that light with God. There are some Quakers that associate that light with something else, right? It is not primarily Christian, and anybody is welcome to join. Now, that being said, the Quakers were given this land because William Penn had a debt that needed to be paid. His father helped rebuild the Navy, and so the king owed him money. And so Charles II did not have that in financial money, actual physical financial money. He had it in stolen land, and so he did give William Penn this land for him and all of his crazy Quakers to stop getting arrested and rebelling against him and making him look really, really bad in England, to come here and do their whole religious freedom thing if they really, really wanted to try it out. Now, like I said, it was stolen land. There were people already living here. The Lenape were living here. They had taken care of this land for 10,000 years, and they were already here, already thriving. I will say William Penn did have fairly good relationships with the Lenape people, but his sons did destroy that relationship due to something called the walking purchase, which I don't have a bunch of time to get into because I want to talk about this space and this building as well, but I highly recommend doing some research about it because it is something that is still being fought about in American court systems today with what happened with the walking purchase, which is how the rest of Pennsylvania was established, right? So we are in right now Arch Street Meeting House. This, before it was a meeting house, it was a burial ground. Okay, so about 17,000 to 20,000 Quakers and those that died during the yellow fever were buried on these grounds. That's why you see those mounds on the outside, and you're actually above the property when you're looking onto the street. And after the yellow fever, because about 10% of the population died, and since Quakers were very nice people, and they were known as nice people, they would be tossed over. At the time, it was about a 4-foot high wall. They'd be tossed, bodies would be tossed over the wall, and the Quakers would bury you. So there were a lot of people that were buried here at a really quick amount of time, and they could no longer use this as burial grounds. And they said, you know, we actually need a larger meeting house, so why don't we just reuse the land? And so they started construction in 1804. It was finished in 1805, the room over here, the East Room. And then this was constructed, started in 1810, finished in 1811. This is a historically preserved space. So when you look around, this looks exactly as it did when it was built. And even down to the floors and down to what the cushions are stuffed with. That is the original horsehair that you are sitting on. The original horsehair, which is, it's really beautiful to be able to kind of be in this space, especially as a religious group as well, because you can really feel that. You can feel that energy and what has come before. Now, this meeting, this was an Orthodox meeting. This was a segregated meeting. I want to be really honest with you guys. Quakers are very honest in how we retell history because it's important, or we won't understand how to evolve moving forward. In this meeting, there was a bench in the back. It was called the Black Bench. Any person that was not white would be forced to sit in that area. And we only know about that due to Sarah Mapps Douglas. Her and her mother came here to worship. Her mother came on a weekly basis. Her daughter was so upset by what she saw, the fact that you would be forced to sit there and two white Quakers would sit on the sides because children would come and say hi to the new faces, not knowing, and the other white Quakers would tell them to go away. right? She was so appalled by this, she wrote letters. We found those letters, we acknowledged those letters, and we acknowledged that that was something that happened at this meeting house. Now, there were two kinds of Quakers. There was Orthodox Quakers, there were Hickside Quakers. Hickside Quakers were a bit more progressive in the ways that things evolved, right? They didn't have segregated meetings as long. Orthodox Quakers, they were very backwards for a quite long time. It had the elders of those communities had to really pass along before things could actually change. Because as we know, Quakers would sit all together and they would make decisions as a group. Everybody had to be on the same page. So if there were still a group of people that still weren't saying yes to something, they had to just keep bringing it up, meeting after meeting after meeting, right? So it took a bit longer for things to change. This meeting is no longer segregated, obviously, but it did take quite a long time, and we still represent that over there as well. I just want to open it up for some questions. Yeah?
I'm wondering, what is the relationship between the moment when Quakers decided we're not going to own slaves anymore? Like, when did that happen?
So it depends. Was there a second part to the question?
Well, I know that it happened different times at different meetings. When it happened here, and then what's the relationship between that and the rise of the suffrage? No, the rise of the abolitionist movement and the Quakers' position in that.
Yeah, so I will say it happened, like you said, it happened at different times for different meetings. The Germantown meeting had a protest back in like the early 1700s. Like I think it was like late 16, early 1700s. I'm very bad with specific dates. I'm better with concepts. Sorry, guys. But that was a small group of people, but they made sure it was notated and that people would know that it happened. So then when other meetings got to that point, there's already been Quakers doing it. You guys are late. You're late, you've realized it, so let's go. Like, let's keep going. And there were even Quakers like Benjamin Lay, who at the time, he literally lived in a cave outside of town, grew his own food, made his own clothing because he didn't want to at all be like supporting or giving his money to anything that involved enslaving others. He came into a meeting, stabbed a Bible that was filled with I think it was like a liver filled with pig's blood, splattered all over his Quaker friends and said, "This is the blood of those that you are enslaving," right? And he was read out of meeting for being a distraction, for being disruptive. But now Quakers today will say that's the kind of energy that we should kind of have when it comes to these issues. That's the kind of energy we should hold. So even though it has taken a long time for meetings like this to kind of get to that place, once it happened full throttle because there were so many other meetings and so many other things that had happened and people and Quakers that really like stood on business when it came to that kind of stuff, which is just absolutely beautiful. Specific things, I can reference to, he is an actual Quaker. I'm not a Quaker myself. Alan over here, are there any specific periods in history that you would want to speak on when it comes to things with abolition with this meeting, if you know?
Well, there were two things you touched on. I'll give you a little bit more detail.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
That 1688 petition in Germantown.
1688.
It's on display in the room at the other end of the building. That was written by those German Quakers and some Mennonites who came to this country and saw that slavery was wrong, but they sent it up the line to the Quaker leaders of the colony, some of whom were slaveholders. That included William Penn. But Quakers kept working on each other, and by the time of the French and Indian War in the 1654 time period, Quakers had generally come to the agreement that slavery was wrong. But it wasn't until 1776, while the rest of the city is reflecting on what's our relationship with Great Britain, how should that look, the Quakers are deciding you can't be a Quaker and hold slaves. And so it took from 1688 to 1776. Now, part of that is Quakers make decisions because everybody is in agreement. And it took that long to get everybody in agreement that not only was slavery wrong, which happened in the 1750s, but that you couldn't be a Quaker and hold slaves.
Some of us in this group believe, God is still speaking to us and through each other. And my understanding was, I grew up in a little Pentecostal world too, is that the Quaker comes from sort of feeling the Spirit stirring in you and the desire to speak. Can you say a little bit more about that?
Yeah, rather in quiet, in prayer and meditation. with no pastor in the room.
Yeah.
And out of that, somebody can stand up and speak. Can be anybody in the room. And the theology of it, you have right. It's that you're prompted by God to say something.
Mm-hmm.
When you're finished speaking, you sit down, more silence, prayer, meditation. Somebody else gets up and speak. Again, it could be anybody in the room. And the benches up front represent the fact that traditionally, not so much today, there's some history there, but these benches represent the fact that some people, when they speak, are more helpful than others. And if you've been speaking from someplace else in the room and you had that kind of depth and quality and about what you had to say, the congregation would invite you to come sit up front and they would call you a minister. But a minister wasn't a paid position, it wasn't special training, it was that spiritual gift of being helpful to others when you spoke during worship. So the men ministers were over there, and the women ministers here, and yes, Quakers had women as ministers going back to the 1650s when they got started. These benches are raised up above the rest of the rooms with a sounding board on top, so their voices bounced easily into this space and that they could be heard easily.
Any other questions?
With the soundboard, you would not want to tell secrets.
You would not. You would not. Everybody's going to hear. Everybody's going to hear. That is very true. Very true. Yeah, definitely.
This was
Of
wonderful.
course, I'm sorry if we went over a little bit. And do you guys want to stay in here? Do you want to explore the space? Whatever you would like to do.
Much more to get to.
We will come back. Yeah.
Of course. No problem. No problem.
We're going to just tell one other thing as people come out. In the rich tradition of Quaker nonviolence, Chaz and I were a part of another gathering here, which was around gun violence and particularly around assault weapons. And what we were looking for a place where we could bring all of the equipment to chop up guns, and particularly an assault rifle, an AR-15. And we called a bunch of different places, and it was this space that let us bring an AR-15 here, destroy it, and bring all the blacksmithing equipment to make it in real time. And we made a plow, which there were a few hundred of us, and it was really powerful. We heard from different folks, and then we processed out of here to our senator's office asking for demanding the ban on assault weapons, and we delivered that plow as a gesture of that request. And when we were met with silence, we did an old-fashioned sit-in, and we were arrested and detained in that, and we still have the senator's plow. Still waiting on that ban. But it was cool that, we even discussed the fact that these are like 200 old bricks. So we're like, yeah, we'll figure all it out. But it was holy to kind of build on that tradition, to process out from here, and to continue the work of nonviolence. So that's another memory we share here.
Violence.
Yep. Thought I'd tell you that while we wait on everybody else. No, that's right.
Welcome to the revival tonight.
Yeah. There's a little precedent of that. There was one of the Russian saints took a big old leg of a cow and put it on the Tsar Ivan the Terrible and said, "What good is your religious fasting if you're shedding the blood of your people?" And so I think there's a little prophetic tradition of that. I'm not going to try it, Pastor
We're
Tracy.
out of bill money, so that's
Yeah, that's right.
We're going to come right here to, this is 4th or 5th Street. We're going to head over to St. George's Church. So we're going to go right this way. As we walk, you're going to pass a couple things. The building, the big gray building there is the mint, where money is printed, one of the mints in the city. And one thing to think about is the role of money in all of the stuff we've talked about, for good and for bad. The role of capitalism, the role of all of that to